Police in Rwanda say a singer who was arrested last week while trying to leave the country legally has killed himself whilst in custody.
Police said Kizito Mihigo had been trying to get to Burundi to join a rebel group. The singer had spent 3 years in prison after he was accused of plotting against the government.
Activists in the diaspora have dismissed the suicide story from the Rwandan police. They also dismissed police claims that Kizito Mihigo had the intention of joining rebels in Burundi but wanted to get to Belgium where he'd lived before.
Well, Kizito's music was the source of his troubles. In one song, he suggested everyone killed during the 1994 genocide should be remembered, whether they were Hutu or Tutsi. Authorities saw this as openly challenging the official narrative that it was a genocide of the Tutsis. Well, attempts to get police to comment further on this tragedy drew a blank. We are, however, joined via Skype by Frank Ntwari, a former member of the ruling party in Rwanda. Frank, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Globe.
Yeah, good evening. How are you?
Well, I'm all right. It's good to have you on the Globe this evening. Why do so many Rwandans and activists in the diaspora find it so difficult to believe the police version that Mr. Kizito actually killed himself in a police cell?
It's very difficult because this has been a trend of the Rwandan government. Mihigo is not the first person to be alleged to have killed himself. A list goes on endlessly. We can talk about Bagamba, who was killed recently. We can talk about Gasache, who was killed. We can talk about Karisa. We can talk about many of them. And it cannot be a coincidence that when Mihigo was arrested, all of a sudden he turns up dead in a cell. So, as I'm saying, that is already a common catastrophe that befalls those who try to run away from the big prison, which is Rwanda.
I mean, we've been trying to get hold of the police, but our efforts drew a blank because we needed to find out the details of his death. Do we know for sure the details surrounding his death as to whether a post-mortem was conducted for police to come to the conclusion that he actually killed himself?
Exactly. That's what brings reasonable suspicion. You see, it is so easy for Rwanda to conclude because they know there is not any independent body that would be able to verify the facts. They will say what they want and they will conclude, and that will be history. Because Rwanda, as you already know, it is known for assassinating its perceived or opponents, either in the country or abroad. You know, it has happened in South Africa, it has happened in Kenya, so this cannot be any different because Rwanda, it does these heinous crimes with impunity. So we know that there is no any independent body that is going to verify what happened, and Rwanda will conclude and tell the international community what they want to tell them. So that is the tragedy, as we say.
Doesn't his arrest and subsequent death, allegedly at the hands of police, feed the narrative that President Kagame is actually a dictator and he uses underhanded tactics to stifle dissent? I mean, you've just mentioned some of the people that were killed in mysterious ways, apparently at the instruction of Mr. Kagame.
Absolutely. As I talk to you right now, you know very well that the Kabera, Gasache, who was a doctor to President Kagame, he claimed that he was shot in the police cells because he wanted to escape. There is a director of finance in the president's office called Karisa Mpende, who was beaten to death, and they said he committed suicide. So now, it's not a coincidence that when Mihigo, whose songs encouraged reconciliation in Rwanda, and he refused to be drawn into being used because as a popular singer to be used to oppress the Hutus and those that were perceived to be opponents of Kagame, that all of a sudden he turns up dead because he was trying to flee the country. So what we are saying is Kagame is a totalitarian dictator who would liken to your Mubaraka, your North Korea, a person who scores 99 in elections. He cannot even pretend to have the opposition, at least to concede that I have an opposition which can be able to stand and get certain votes. So this tells you that in Rwanda there is it's a totalitarian regime which is hell-bent to hearing no any other dissenting view. And any dissenting view must be silenced so that it can send a message to the Rwandans inside the country that no one is allowed or should attempt to challenge Kagame or say anything against the regime.
Do we know why he was attempting to flee the country without a judicial permission?
Remember, Rwanda is a big prison in itself. When Mihigo was arrested because he refused to be used by the regime, he was accused of speaking to terrorists, because everyone who opposes Kagame becomes a terrorist to them. So now Mihigo has been in a big cell, which is Rwanda. We cannot actually ascertain and say that he was trying to flee because there is no any independent verification. It is the same token that when they want to get rid of you, any story will be created so that you can get rid of, to give a message to those who may think they can stand up to Kagame. So at this stage, you know very well that there is no any independent media in Rwanda. There is no any human rights bodies in Rwanda which can verify this. Amnesty International cannot be allowed to operate in Rwanda, so is human rights. So clearly, they will say as they please, but the reason why Mihigo would probably have tried to flee is because he would have known that in any case, eventually he will be killed. And unfortunately, if he tried it, if it is true that he tried to run away, or it was used to justify the orchestrated plan to kill him as well, so that at the end of the day, they say was trying to escape. But at this stage, what we know is, without a doubt, he has been assassinated by the government of Rwanda, because we know this happened to Rugambaje, it happened to Let Patrick Karegeya in this country, it happened to Sendashong in Kenya. So it is a common way of the dictator Kagame deals with those that oppose him.
Well, you speak of Mr. Mihigo being arrested because he refused to be used by the current regime. But let's not forget that he was actually arrested because, well, from the information that we're getting, he was convicted of planning to kill President Kagame, and he actually admitted to that, hence his sentence was reduced. He also admitted to exchanging text messages with the South African-based opposition group, the Rwanda National Congress.
You see, exactly. You see, this is what we are talking about. In Rwanda, you are tortured, you are dealt with, and you will have to say what they want you to say. This is not a justice system that can be accessed by the independent or human rights bodies. This is the problem that we are having. So Rwandans will tell you to say whatever they want, and they will use it in the international community or in any other civilized society to justify their actions. You know, I can give you just a simple example whereby a Rwandan dissident was kidnapped called Joel Mutabazi in the Ugandan UN custody protection, kidnapped to Rwanda, sentenced to life. Today is being tortured and no one can be able to access him. So we can talk about Rujiganangabo, who won all the cases who could not win in Rwandan courts. He won in East African courts and African courts of law, but today they cannot release him. So Rwanda does things with the impunity, and there is no one who can hold them accountable, but then go out there to just give their fabricated versions.
Frank Ntwari, a former member of the ruling party in Rwanda, speaking to us via Skype. Thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.